Medical insurance, medical insurance. Is medical insurance complicated? And what should we know when we're choosing a medical cover for ourselves and our families? We've done a lot of consultations as Forthwell Insurance Agency for our clients for when choosing a medical cover. And we have realized that there's a lot of things we do not understand about medical insurance. So people will start saying that insurance does not pay, or they only paid out of a bill of 500, they only paid 150. So why did they pay 150? And your limit says you have an inpatient of 1 million or you have an inpatient of 10 million. Why only the 150? And why sometimes do we have to look at a provider panel when choosing a medical cover? And why also do we have to look at other settings and subsettings of a medical cover when choosing one, and how best to do it? Let's dig into it. So usually a medical cover has an inpatient part of it and an outpatient part of it. An inpatient part of a medical cover covers the admissions when you're in hospital admitted, and also it covers daycare surgeries. When you go to maybe you're having a colonoscopy or you're having a day surgery, maybe a small glaucoma removal, those ones are covered under inpatient. Also, chemotherapy is covered under inpatient, and it's a day procedure. Now, the outpatient part covers when you go to see a doctor, if you're coughing, or you're going to see a specialist, and it also covers the subscriptions. It covers the medical, the pharmacy bills when you're going to get your medicines. It's covered under the outpatient. So the two components of a medical cover: the inpatient when you're admitted, and the outpatient when you just go to see a doctor or a specialist, or you're going to take your medicines from the pharmacies. That's the outpatient part of it. That's one of the parts you have to look. What limit of inpatient do you need? Are you alone or are you with the family? If you're alone, you can consider having an inpatient of 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. And if you are younger also, you can have a smaller inpatient. The younger you are, you don't need to have an expensive or a bigger limit of outpatient. The older you get, the more the conditions come in life, so you require a bigger inpatient cover in case of admissions to take care of the old age diseases. Outpatient, usually inpatient starts from 500,000. Most companies, they operate from 250, I think it's 150, 250, 500, 750, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4, 5 million, and then up to 10 million. Then the outpatient is the one that covers all this when you go to the visits, as I said earlier. So that one starts from around 25,000. Most companies start from 25,000 up to 200,000 outpatient limit. Usually in most covers, the inpatient is shared per family. That means that if you are 3 people in a family and you take a cover of 1 million, the 1 million will be shared amongst the 3 of you. And it's not going to be shared in equal amount. It's just going to be shared in a way that if anyone gets admitted and they use like 300, the cover remains 700,000. The next person who gets admitted, if they get admitted, they'll use the remaining from the 700,000. That's we have to understand. It's not that if you take a cover of 1 million, everyone the 1 million is cut into 3 parts or 2 parts according to your family members. No, it's whoever uses it reduces the amounts. Now, most covers have an option of you choosing an outpatient per person limit. That means everyone in the family has their own outpatient. Let's say John has his, the spouse Mary has her own limit, and the kids have their own limit. That is per person. So if you take a cover of 50,000, John will have his own 50,000 for outpatient. Mary will have a 50,000 for outpatient, and the kids will have their own 50-50 for outpatient, depending on the number of people you put on cover. So that's also one thing you look at. And then there's also shared per family. You can have a limit of outpatient shared per family. That means that if you take a limit of 50,000, the 50,000 is shared amongst the family members. If anyone goes to hospital, they use 10,000, it means that it's remaining 40,000 out of the 50,000. So if you're going to take per family quote for the outpatient, I usually say that maybe you should take a higher limit, like 200,000, so that it assists in that. Because if you take 50 and someone goes and they use, it remains, it gets exhausted really fast. So those are 2 things you have to look at. You have to look at the limit of outpatient, the limit of inpatient, and then there are those things we call waiting periods. These are really important when taking a medical cover. Please try and understand the waiting periods of the cover that you're taking. Waiting periods are the periods that you have to wait before you seek for a specific treatment of before using the cover. The first waiting period we have in a medical cover is the 29-day waiting period for illness claims. You cannot use your medical cover immediately you buy it unless it's accidental. Now, if you get an accident, you can't have planned to have an accident. So if you take a medical cover today and tomorrow you have injuries from an accident, you fell or car accident, or something happened, you cut your finger, you can go to the hospital and it will be paid for immediately. But illness claims usually have 29 to 30 days, depending on the provider you're using, before you have an illness claim. Why 29 days before you can cover an illness claim? This is to reduce the chances of insurance fraud, so that you don't take a cover because you're going to the hospital or because you are sick. So the 29 days is a period which usually, if you are sick, within 29 days you'll be discharged, to make sure that you don't misuse cover. That's the first waiting period, 29 days. After that, there's another waiting period for surgical claims. It's usually about 60 days or 90 days, depending on the provider. And the provider is the insurance company. So some insurance companies will say for surgical claims, we give a 60-day waiting period. You cannot take a cover right now and go into surgery immediately. You'll have to wait for 60 days before you can put in a surgical claim on the cover. Other covers are 90 days before you can go for surgical claims. Then there's also another waiting period, which we call on maternity and female reproductive surgeries. It's there in most covers. They'll say that you cannot go for maternity or surgical removal of fibroids or other surgical for women until after 1 year waiting period. So after the 1 year waiting period, that's when you can claim on a maternity cover. You cannot be pregnant right now and take a cover and the maternity will pay. Most covers, individual covers won't do that. They'll tell you have a waiting period of 1 year before we cover maternity, which is important. Then there's also what we call pre-existing conditions. Pre-existing conditions are conditions which you had when joining the cover. Let's say John is diabetic and he decides to take a medical cover. Anything that is associated with diabetes or any complication that arises from the condition diabetes will not be paid for 1 year. It's a very disputable clause, because sometimes how do you say that this condition is from the pre-existing condition, or the blood pressure I'm having right now is from diabetes, or failure of my eyesight is because of diabetes? It's really a very thin line, but they say any pre-existing conditions and any complications from pre-existing conditions will not be covered for 1 year. They fall under pre-existing. So they're not covered for 1 year. After 1 year, they'll be fully covered, and they'll be covered for life so long as you have the medical cover. So we have known that you have to look for the inpatient limit, outpatient limit, then waiting periods. Then there's another thing you have to look at. It's called the sub-limits. So under inpatient, we've said that if you take up an inpatient of 1 million, there's also other limits inside the 1 million. They can say that pre-existing conditions are only covered up to 250, meaning that even if you have a cover of 1 million and John is admitted for the diabetical condition that he has, the medical cover will pay the bill only up to 250, because that's the sub-limit for pre-existing. Then there are limits like for newly diagnosed chronic conditions. Those are conditions that you have to take medicine for the rest of your life, or they are manageable but they are not curable. Those are chronic conditions. So those conditions usually have their own sub-limit. Newly diagnosed, some covers will say we pay up to the full amount. Some covers will say we pay up to 40 or like 750,000 out of the 1 million. Some will say we only pay 350. It's very important to look at that. Then there's also another clause you have to really look at. It's what we call when do they start covering pre-existing newly diagnosed chronic conditions. There are covers that will not cover cancer if newly diagnosed. Even if you didn't have the condition, then you take cover, then after 1 month or 6 months you discover you have cancer, they will say that they will not pay it for 2 years. There are covers that will pay it immediately and they'll pay it to the full amount. So those are the little things you have to look, the sub-limits of the conditions, pre-existing, newly diagnosed, maternity. You have to look at that. Then medical covers, some of the underwriters currently offer a dental and optical as a rider. A rider is an additional benefit that you do not pay for, that is already linked into the cover. So some of the covers will have dental and optical linked into the limit of outpatient you take. Let's say they call it banded. So if you take a cover of, let's say, inpatient of 1 million, you can take an outpatient of maximum 60,000. And if you take that package, it doesn't come with a dental and optical. So there's such cover. There are covers, if you want to have a dental and optical, you have to take an inpatient of 1 million and an outpatient of 100. Then they'll give you a dental of 10,000, which you cannot increase or reduce in any amount. It's just fixed at 10,000 optical, 10,000 dental. Then there are covers that you can actually choose the dental and optical limit according to your needs. It's important also to look at that. So when I sit down with my clients, we actually ask ourselves all those questions. Okay, do you really require dental? How much of dental do you require? If you take this cover will already come with a prepaid dental of 10,000. We cannot go with higher than that. Then we also look at another thing that is very important. It's called panel of providers. When you're choosing, look at the panel of providers. Panel of providers is those hospitals you can go to using that cover. So you always tell people, okay, Mr. John, this is there's X cover, there's B cover, and there's Y. So we are going to settle on this. You say, okay, the price is important to look at. Okay, the price is giving us this. It's more affordable, but are the hospitals meeting your standards? Are there any hospital where you live in the cover? Does the panel of providers provide hospitals within your area? Let's say you are living in Kiambu Road. Then you have a medical cover that does not cover any hospital on Kiambu Road. So at night, or if you have an emergency, you have to travel all the way to Westlands or all the way to town for you to get services. So we look at that also. Where is your rural home? You tell me, okay, me, I'm from, let's say, Mombasa, Diani. So I say, okay, in Diani, which hospitals are there? So in case you are at the village and you have an emergency, your kid is sick, does this cover for hospitals in your rural area, or it does not have any hospital there? We look at all those packages. We look at if there are any hospitals near your kids' schools where they can be rushed. We look at where you're working, where your wife is working, and where you live. Are the hospital packages enough to meet that? So it's also important not to only look at price, you look at also the panel of providers, which means the hospitals that are covered by that insurance. It's important also to look at that as one factor when choosing a medical cover, and it's what also I tell my clients we look at when choosing. So we've learned that we have to look at the level of inpatient and the level of outpatient that is there. We have learned that we have to look at the sub-limits which are inside the inpatient. We have learned that we have to look at the level of dental and optical, and we also have to look at the panel of providers when choosing a medical cover. I don't believe choosing a medical cover is really a problem. I believe it's understanding the medical cover that is a problem with most people. We at Forthwell Insurance Agency make sure that you understand what you're getting into and the cover what is giving you. And we're looking forward to insure you. Like, subscribe, and follow our page to get more information on insurance so that you know more about insurance and you become wiser. Thank you for watching.